Hi, this is Jeff Weiss. I'm standing in the greenhouse at Emily Oaks Nature Center where I work, and I'm going to conduct a little lesson now on the propagation of native plants. So what I'm going to do first is to demonstrate the technique of stratification. And in this box I have various species of seeds, native plants that were collected in the fall, and I am going to plant a gentian. This one is called bottle gentian, and I know that because the letters G-E-N, A-N-D are on the bottle. That's Gentiana andrewsii. So what I'm going to do to stratify this is to prepare the seeds to go into a moist, cool place so that they can begin to imbibe moisture and prepare to germinate. So I'm not going to count the seeds, but I am going to pour them out in a controlled amount. And this is a pretty fine seed. So I'm going to hope for 32 plants to eventually come out of this to fill a tray of pots. But I'm going to actually select something more like 200 seeds to go in here in case things do not germinate. In any event, the seeds are here. I'm now putting them into a plastic baggie that I've marked with Gen and some instructions about the germination, the requirements of that plant to break dormancy. And where I get that information is from this book. It's called the Prairie Moon Nursery Catalog, and for several hundred species, it has very specific information about how to overcome dormancy and to get those seeds started. So the seeds are in the baggie. Next step is to give them some media to keep them moist. I'm pouring in some sand. I've sterilized the sand to keep the weed seeds out. And I just pour a very small quantity in there with the seeds. I spritz them a little bit, and mix them up, and this set of seeds is now ready to go into the refrigerator for 60 days of cold stratification. And I'm going to put it in with the other bags of seeds that are already stratifying. And now I'm going to go to the next technique, which is scarification. So scarification is another way of breaking dormancy for certain seeds that have a thick, hard seed coat. And these seeds happen to be from redbud, Circus canadensis, and it's a legume, and they have very hard shell or testa around the seeds. And what I'm going to do in this case now is to scarify them, scratch the seed coat with 2 blocks of sandpaper. So I'm going to fairly gently, rub them between these 2 blocks. And after a while, you can see that I have scratched a little bit of the seed coat off, and now these seeds are also going to be ready to be stratified. Sometimes multiple techniques are required to break dormancy and to get seeds to germinate, but I'm not going to do that right now. I'm going to do that a little later. I'm going to show you something else instead. And what I'm going to show you is a couple of plants that I'm taking out of stratification and starting in a seed tray. And those 2 plants are right here, and there's no magic to this, but I generally will start 2 different species in one seed tray. And the reason why is because I'm not producing mass quantities of these seeds. I'm just trying to get a nice tray of wildflowers for our plant sale or for planting on our grounds here at the Nature Center. So I'm not looking for hundreds or thousands of plants like a commercial greenhouse. I'm looking for ultimately to grow maybe 2,000, 3,000 plants in the course of a year. Now this first seed is Erigeron yuccifolium, also known as rattlesnake master, and this just come out of the refrigerator. I'm going to pour the sand and seed mix, moist sand and seed mix on the tray. This is a fairly large seed. It's a prairie plant, and so I'm going to mix it up into the soil. The really small seeds stay on top of the soil, and I wouldn't mix them in because they might not germinate without sunlight, another frequent requirement of seeds to break dormancy and to germinate. The second one is it's a native clematis called Virginsbauer. It's a vine, a common plant in some of our savannas and woodlands. And this one has a smallish seed, but it also has some residue hanging on. So I'm going to split this up, get it distributed around the seed tray so there's some even germination, and label both sets of plants. I prepared my labels ahead of time, and for everything I plant, I put in 2 labels. So in this one, I'm going to bury one in there, out of sight, and then one in sight. So if this one gets pushed off in the course of handling, I'll still be able to identify the seedlings growing in this tray. So the next step, I have a hose, but I'll just show the essential step of watering these seedlings, or watering these seeds, and finishing up on the steps of breaking dormancy for these plants. Watering is an art and a science. We talked about it in an earlier lesson, and it's important to pay attention to both the frequency and the amount of water that you apply to plants, and in the case of native plants, to make sure that they have a chance to dry out and to prevent fungus and other diseases from taking your seeds. Now, the next step of what I'm going to show you is going from seedlings, and I have a nice tray of seed plants that I put in last year. This is actually Aster tarmocoides, also known as heath aster, and I've prepared a tray of 32 pots to repot these. So these seedlings are ready to be transplanted into pots and prepared for sale. And what I'm trying to do here, show you, is I just use a common teaspoon, but I try to get well under it so I get all of the roots caught up. And I'm putting that plant into a pot that I've already filled half full of soil. And now I'm just going to top that off. Water it in, and I've got my first out of 32 plants here that are, this will be a nice plant ready for sale in April when we have our plant sale. So this is the first of at least 2 of these videos. I'm also going to show you next week a separate video on making cuttings of shrubs, and I hope this is helpful in understanding our material.